too often we don't look hard enough for the solutions. We don't talk to our suppliers enough about solutions. And we're quite happy to be greenwashed about the solutions that are out there because we want the feeling of kind of doing something, but not really putting any effort in.
Welcome to The Greener Way. I'm Rose Mary Petrass, Senior Journalist at FS Sustainability. We are recording on Gadigal land. We pay our respects to traditional custodians of country and elders past, present and emerging. Today, we're going to be talking about the power of advocacy and moving business towards a low-carbon economy. Influential public figure Jon Dee is joining us today. Welcome to the show, Jon.
Thanks for having me on, Rose.
Jon is an advocate and philanthropist. He is the founder of a number of initiatives, including Planet Ark and DoSomething, and the chair of the Forest Stewardship Council of Australia and New Zealand. Jon, when it comes to the corporate world, what are the biggest motivators for business to take action on climate?
Well, I think the single biggest one is to save money. But unfortunately, not enough companies, I think, are doing this. We need to focus on the money-saving aspects of sustainability and efficiency within the corporate sector. And so I think we need to look at sustainability and climate action through an efficiency and money-saving lens. So if you think about what are the things that can reduce bills and bring about a positive climate outcome, you're looking at energy efficiency, you're looking at materials efficiency, you're looking at fuel efficiency, water efficiency, food efficiency. When we become efficient in our use of energy, materials, fuel, water, and food, then we have less bills and there's less waste. And of course, if you look at energy as an example, just a 1% improvement in Australia's energy efficiency would boost our economy by up to $1.5 billion. But the reality is we can do a lot more than 1%. And, if you think about just the basic things that so many businesses and householders don't do, are basics that don't cost money. Things like managing your thermostat at home or at work. The amount of times you go into a restaurant or a hotel or a business and it's either too hot or it's too cold. And what people don't realize is something as simple as that. If you don't have your thermostat, say, set to 18 during winter, if every degree you go up to warm your workplace or your home, that's a 10% increase in your heating costs. And yet when I've done audits of businesses and households at times, it's amazing how many times the heating is set to 24 or 26 and people are walking around in t-shirts during the middle of winter. And they're running their heating bills at like 50, 60, 80% higher than they should be. And even basic things like having a plan to switch things off, so many people don't do that.
Now, according to PwC, almost half of investors see climate as a top priority for business. And on the consumer side, depending on who you ask, a significant share is concerned about climate change. So how can shareholders and the public in general hold companies to account on their sustainability practices and promises?
Well, I think it comes down to results. If you think about companies, it put lots of lovely statements into their annual reports, but the reality comes down to what kind of results are they actually getting? And so I think for investors, that's key because, if someone is really being efficient in how they're running their business, the reality is you'll see that benefit on the bottom line and they'll be able to report to that. Unfortunately, too many times, I think when when we look at companies who put out stuff on sustainability, when you look really in depth at them, it's amazing how often they'll do the publicity about the sustainability and climate action on high profile stuff, but you dig deep and then you see that they're clearing land that's got koalas on it. You'll see that they're just not walking the talk in so many other areas of their business. So I think any investor or anyone who has an interest in a certain company, I think you have to ask questions as to what is there behind the wording, what's behind the statements. And often what I like to focus on are what are you doing that's actually saving money or making your business more resilient? What's making your supply chain more resilient and more sustainable? And those are the kind of issues I think investors need to look at.
And, to talk about the importance of creating a low carbon economy, what do you see as the biggest challenge in achieving this goal?
I think the biggest challenge is a lack of knowledge about the solutions. And I think
Hmm.
part of that is self-inflicted by the sustainability officers. We tend to, people interested in sustainability tend to deal in silos. We talk to each other a lot, and we don't go out there and find out what the average person knows. What does your boss know? What does the average person know? What do your
Hmm.
customers know? And I know from having done hundreds of speeches on business sustainability, there is a real lack of awareness about what sustainability means, what efficiency
Hmm.
means. And, so for every problem we have, the solutions are already out there, but most bosses, most managers have no idea about those solutions. And if a boss or a manager fails to recognize the potential of efficiency or sustainability, the reality is they're not going to get the money saving benefits of taking that kind of approach. It's when we see, management and bosses not realizing that you can actually now get cheaper finance. So for example, there was one packaging company that negotiated $420 million in bank loans with cheaper interest rates that became available if they met recycling and sustainability targets. I think the other final thing, which is a real problem, is misinformation.
Hmm.
There's a lot of people, like if you look at oil producing countries, they have a vested interest in putting out misinformation about electric vehicles. Car companies that have fallen behind in developing electric vehicles are also putting out misinformation. And so, if you listen to the media, you'd believe that electric car sales are actually plummeting. The reality is we're going to have a 15 to 20% increase yet again this year in the sales of electric vehicles. But if you
Hmm.
read the media, you'd believe that all the sales are, totally tanking, which is not the case. And I think that misinformation about climate change as well
Hmm.
has been a significant problem for decades now. And so that, again, is one of those key issues that is holding up that our transition, I believe.
So, would you say that kind of misinformation about what sustainability is and those money saving benefits that come along with it are kind of the biggest issue that we're facing here?
Look, I think so. Well, it's one of them anyway. But I think there's a need for the Australia and the rest of the world to become a lot more sustainable. Population growth is clearly an issue.
Hmm.
Climate change, pollution. But I think the key thing, if you add everything up, the reality is we've got to make raw materials last a lot longer. With a growing population, growing demand for consumer goods, a better quality of life desired by so many of us around the world, including developing countries. The reality is we don't have enough raw materials to expand our economies in the way that we are. So we need to make raw materials last a lot longer. And so for that, we need to move to what we call a circular economy, where
Hmm.
instead of having a situation where we dig stuff out of the ground, we turn it into stuff, do some token recycling, where everything mainly ends up in landfill, we've got to find a way to just keep those materials going. And so, there's some really interesting examples now starting to become mainstream. If you look at IKEA, the Kungsbacka kitchen that they have has got 100% recycled wood content. It's got 100% recycled plastic. No
Hmm.
virgin materials are used in it. If you look at St. John's Ambulance Brigade in the Northern Territory, all their uniforms contain 100% recycled content. And when they finish with those uniforms, they go back to the company they bought them from to be recycled back into more uniforms.
Hmm.
If you look at Philips, a lot of them, if you ever go to a healthcare facility and, you get the different x-rays and other kind of scans that you get, that Philips machinery never gets thrown out. When the company is finished with it, the healthcare facility is finished with it, it then goes back to Philips and they refurbish it. So it looks like new. They update the software, they replace parts that need replacing, and then it goes back out onto the marketplace.
Hmm.
And I think the other final thing there, when it comes to that whole raw material side of things, we've got to make sure that where we're getting our materials from, it is sustainably derived. And also it is sustainable. And that's why it's really important that, if you're buying paper or you're buying wood, you buy those materials that are FSC certified. And so
Hmm.
I think it's very important that you look for independent verification of facts and figures. You look for independent verification of your supply chain. And I think the final thing I think which is really important is that critical importance of collaborating on solutions, because if you think about your staff, your suppliers, your consultants, all of them can help you to identify money-saving solutions or no-cost solutions that will significantly reduce the impact of your business on the environment. That's a no-brainer. And if you look at a good example of that, Apple is a member of the RE100 initiative, where over 420 really big companies are going 100% renewable with their electricity use. And so Apple has reached out to their supply chain, and they're now in a position where 300 of Apple's manufacturers have now committed to using 100% clean energy in their own production. And so, companies also need to reach out to the people who are supplying them and learn about their supply chain to know what to ask for to ensure that whoever is supplying them is doing it in the least harmful way possible to the environment. Because, if your business is becoming more sustainable, you want to ensure that everyone supplying you is also doing the same.
Over the next decade, what do you see as the most critical actions in addressing climate change and other sustainability challenges?
Well, I think that without a doubt, the most important thing is to significantly reduce our usage of raw materials and use that in a more circular way, reduce our use of energy, get to a situation where, when it comes to energy, we're sourcing it from renewable sources, where we have better energy reduction plans in our businesses, where we become a lot more efficient in how we're using materials. The critical need to make sure that we electrify everything, including transportation. So making sure it's not just a matter of having your cars, your trucks, your vehicles going electric. You should also be looking at things, that your delivery services that are delivering your products, your couriers, make sure that they're also going electric too. Companies like IKEA are going to be 100% using electric vehicle delivery by the end of next year. Amazon will be doing that by 2030. So there's lots of companies already doing that. I think the water efficiency side of things is critical, and especially in a country like Australia, where we live in the driest inhabited continent in the world. And then finally, just this huge amount of food that we waste. Millions and millions and millions of tons, not just in Australia, but all around the world. And when you throw away that food, you're throwing away all the resources, the energy, the water it took to get that food from the paddock all the way to your plate. And so, some of these things, people have a very negative view of where we're heading. And sure, if we do nothing about it, if the politicians continue to prevaricate, we will have problems. But I strongly believe that a well-educated business sector has a financial benefit from moving in a more sustainable direction. The problem is a lot of businesses don't understand even the most basic things. And the final example I would give there is every speech I do, and as I said, I do hundreds of speeches, I always ask one question. When people buy equipment for the home or they buy it for their business, do any of them, I ask them to put their hand up if they do a 10-year running cost on the electricity it would need to power that equipment, to know that you're getting the most energy efficient equipment that will save you money and reduce energy use. Hardly anyone ever puts their hand up, because no one does the most basic due diligence when it comes to buying equipment and what will actually reduce their bills. So businesses tend to put more energy into moaning about the size of their energy bills instead of actually buying equipment that will actually reduce it, and then have a plan on how to turn off that equipment and use it in the most efficient way possible. So going forward, I think that's the real solution. All the solutions that we need to create a more climate-friendly, more sustainable business sector and world, all the solutions are out there. The key thing we now have to do is implement them, and that's why I've got my new book. It's the second version follow-up of my sustainable growth book coming out at the end of the year, because 15 years since I wrote the first edition of Sustainable Growth, and that shifted about 100,000 copies. So many new things have come out and are happening that businesses can do that they couldn't do back in 2010. So from my point of view, I'm really excited about getting those solutions out there so that businesses have no excuse to not do the right thing. Because if a business is properly run, it can significantly reduce its environmental impact and save money at the same time. And that's the key message I think we need to get out there.
What would you say to those who might argue that perhaps that they're, transitioning to these sustainable products or materials could be too expensive, that the net zero transition is too expensive?
Well, I think the word is bullshit. Speaking frankly, if I look at an example of something I did, I wanted to get rid of phosphates in laundry detergents in Australia. And so I reached out to every single company who made laundry detergents or sold them. So that included people like Coles, Woolworths, and Aldi. And the first reaction people had was, well, it's going to cost more. We can't do it. People aren't prepared to spend more. But I argued that you can get rid of phosphates, replace it with something else, and it won't cost anything extra. And sure enough, I managed to get all 2 billion laundry washes in Australia now, every single year, do not have phosphate in. Didn't cost more to do. It also didn't change the quality of the wash. And at the same time, one of the things that Unilever found out from their Omo product was that by getting rid of phosphate in Omo, they reduced the climate impact of that product by 30% because the alternative required a lot less energy to derive and process. And so my argument to people is, too often we don't look hard enough for the solutions. We don't talk to our suppliers enough about solutions. And we're quite happy to be greenwashed about the solutions that are out there because we want the feeling of kind of doing something, but not really putting any effort in. And so my new book is going to be arguing that if you're not putting the effort into finding these solutions, then you're basically not running your business properly and you should be replaced by someone who will. And so my whole new approach is to go in a lot more hard-nosed on business management to get them to do their job properly, because if you're an investor and you're putting money into a company, you need to know that they're being efficiently run and that they have a sustainability outlook that will mean that they're going to keep making money, keep delivering for their investors way into the future. And for that to happen, we've got to get a lot more proactive in implementing the solutions.
Thank you so much for your time today, Jon. Where can people connect with you and your work?
So there's two websites for me. For me personally, it's jondee.com, which is JONDEE.com. And if you're interested in helping out in your local community, there's my Do Something website, which is dosomethingnearyou.com.au.
Until next time, I'm Rose Mary Petrass, and thank you for listening.
The Greener Way podcast is a product of FS Sustainability, a show about people, the planet, and investing in our collective future. All information in this podcast is for education and entertainment purposes only. The Greener Way podcast gives listeners access to information and educational content provided by discussing numerous financial sustainable options and our featured guests. It is not intended as a substitute for professional, legal, or tax advice. The hosts of The Greener Way are not financial professionals and are not aware of your personal financial circumstances. Before making any financial decisions, you should read the product disclosure statement and, if necessary, consult a licensed financial professional. For more information, head to the disclaimer page on the FS Sustainability website, fssustainability.com.au.